Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Tulley, President and Executive Writing Coach at Defend, Publish, and Lead, and welcome to episode 120, Sabbatical Planning 9 Months Out. I mentioned in a previous episode, I don't remember which one, that I will be on sabbatical in spring of 2024, so between January and May of 2024. And one of the things that I found the last two times I had sabbaticals, I've been lucky enough to have two of them over the course of my entire career of being a professor, was that there's not a whole lot of resources out there about how to plan your sabbatical or use the time effectively. And there are a few things here and there. I will link to anything that I still have in the show notes. And this was something that was going to be on my list to do to see, because obviously I'm going to be going on one again. I'm lucky enough to be able to do it a third time. And I want to make sure that I'm looking at all the resources that are available. So all the ones that I find, I will link in the show notes for you. But one of the things I know from past experience for doing a sabbatical two different times was that, it seems like there is a lot of time when you're on sabbatical, but then at the end of it, you never feel like you accomplished things, or the time went too quickly, or you just have this nagging feeling that perhaps you're wasting your sabbatical, depending on what your project was. And actually, when I look back at the last two sabbaticals that I had, I don't think that I actually wasted the time. The first time I was a visiting scholar at Ohio State in digital media and composition. That same time that I was on sabbatical, I actually was pregnant. Not intentional. It just happened to line up that way because I had to apply, I think, a year in advance or 6 months in advance or something like that. So I was sort of navigating those two happenings at the same time. But I still did I felt good work. I got to do some presentations there. I thought there were some projects I wanted to work on. And, in that time, during that time, I was very lucky to be working at another university for the first time, away from my own university. So that was an experience in itself. And at least for me, I did not put very high expectations on myself with that very first sabbatical. I said, okay, these are three things I want to do. I picked kind of low-hanging fruit type projects. I know I worked on an article that I'd really wanted to do, and I could not find time because it was extremely complex. It just was a really challenging project that I was working on. I also had a book proposal that I was trying to finish, and then I had a talk that I was going to give. So I actually did complete all of the projects during the time, and it was just, a really great experience. But I still felt like, could I have pulled off one or two other things? I probably could have, based on the amount of time that I had available. I didn't do it. I don't regret it. But I know that from talking to other people at that institution when I was on sabbatical, I met with a few other people that were, and, there's always just sort of this thing like, I should be writing all day long because I don't have to teach. I don't have administration. I don't have these other things. So that was the first one. And I know the second time around, in that case, I had a very specific project I was working on. I was doing a lot of research at the Center for Hellenic Studies in Washington, D.C. One of my areas that I teach is in classical rhetorical theory. And I wanted to do some archival research, which I did do at the library. That project I actually have still not put together into a publication. So this is one of the times where I really dug into researching in an archive, and I have all these really cool pieces of pieces of projects that I want to stick together that I have not yet done, because at least for me, faculty writing productivity, academic writing project management, that's kind of my first love. That's what I'm really into right now. And I love this other stuff too, but it's a secondary interest. And so for me, the timing has to be right for me to complete one of those articles. So for all I know, I may actually use my next sabbatical to complete that article from my last one. That's one of the projects that I was kind of thinking might fit into that time. But for this third one, I'm at about 9 months out from when I will be doing this visit. I'm doing a visiting scholar position again, also at Ohio State in project narrative, which is really kind of a cool thing. What I will be doing is looking at faculty interviews about how they describe their writing processes, and especially I'm going to pay attention to that project management piece. So I'll be asking questions like, when you have an idea, where does it go? Where do you put it? Because I'm really interested in idea capture, and you've certainly heard me talk through a lot of the things that I'm thinking about with this stuff. But I know that to be ready to go there in 9 months, I need to think about, well, I need to collect these interviews. I don't have them yet. I haven't written the IRB, the Institutional Research Board, the human subjects approval paperwork type stuff. I haven't finished that. I haven't figured out my interview questions. I haven't done all of that stuff. And I also haven't done the back end of this project as what am I going to do with this information? Because I know for this one, this is not going to be a book. This is definitely going to be an article. So I know some places where I'm potentially sending this article, but I need to do sort of the back end to decide which journal am I going to, and then thinking about, okay, I want to do these interviews. I want to use narrative theory to kind of understand how faculty talk about their writing processes, how they tell these narratives about themselves. I know all that, but I need to decide who wants it, which is going to help me then back end design my interviews and what I'm planning to do at that point. So 9 months out, I know there are things I have to do to be ready to go on that sabbatical. I cannot, start the semester on January 5th or whenever they start and say, okay, I'm ready to work on my project now, because I'll be waiting, 6 weeks to get IRB back, and then I still have to collect my data. I want to go with my data. So that's what I'm using the sabbatical for. And this is something I did not do on either of my previous sabbaticals. I didn't have a project for one like this. I knew kind of what I wanted to do, but I viewed sabbaticals more as a time to complete things versus really research, investigate, theorize things. So this time around, I want to take advantage of the fact that I'm working with folks in project narrative, and I'll put a link to it in the show notes for anybody that's interested in what that is. But I want to make sure that I'm taking advantage of all the experiences and the expertise there in a way that at the Center for Hellenic Studies and at Ohio State in a different capacity I did previously. I feel like I did, use many of the things, but I probably wasn't as 100% ready to go on day one of a sabbatical as I could have been. So that's one thing I'm thinking about 9 months out. The other thing that I'm thinking about in addition to that is that I want to spend some of the time researching. I want to do some of the time, analyzing these interviews. I want to do writing of this article. I thought about, when am I going to complete this article? Am I completing it within the window of the sabbatical? And I think it's possible, because we're talking about 4 months or 5 months. So my number one project, and this is kind of coming back to thinking through 9 months ahead, what do I want to accomplish by doing this sabbatical? One of them is having this article published, out, ready to go. So it's out. And ideally, I'd like it out maybe even like 2/3 into the sabbatical, so I can be even doing some research from another project, which I have no idea what that is, but just to take advantage of how a sabbatical sometimes can help you complete a project or generate data or research, a new topic. I want to even think about, could I get another project out of the sabbatical? I don't know. This could be the last one I get. My institution is very generous. I'm able to take one, every 6-7 years, somewhere around there. But, you never know what's going to happen. So I want to make sure that, I'm using this one as best I can. So projects are one thing I'm thinking about. Another thing I'm thinking about is a little bit about time usage, because certainly time usage for me will change. I'm not doing the same things. I'm not teaching. I'm not doing committee work or anything like that. So I know for me, I'm not ready to think about this right now at the 9-month mark, but I will do some follow-ups at like 6 months and 3 months. So you can listen for those episodes. But I definitely want to know by, between 3 months and 6 weeks out, I do want to have some semblance of what is the schedule going to be? What am I planning to do? What are some events I want to make sure I have on my calendar? So I make sure that I'm on campus there that day to go to that really great speaker. All those things I want to make sure I have lined up by then. So if you're thinking about applying for a sabbatical, if we think I should have done this really a year out, in my case, I had to apply about a year out. So 9 months, 9 months to the time I'm taking sabbatical. For some of you might still be able to pull off if you're thinking, should I take one or not? You might still be able to get one. depending on where you are in your institution. But in my case, I had to already have done it. So this is, a year out. I needed to think about it. I needed to write an application to get one. I had to have a project in mind and, more details about it. But I also had to apply to Project Narrative to get in as a visiting scholar and be able to do that work. So all of those things were all due roughly about a year before I'm going. And so, working backwards a little bit, those pieces had to be put in place before I could even start getting to the point where I am now, 9 months out, thinking about, well, what am I going to do, for my project? What has to be done now? What do I have to do this summer to be ready to go in the spring? So big picture for me, if I'm thinking about that, is that in the summer, I absolutely have to design, make sure I go through whatever IRB training I have to do. I have to find out about those research protocols to be able to do interviews. I have to design the interview questions. I have to make sure I get approval for everything. I have to solicit participants. I have to collect all their interviews. There's many other things along those lines, but I also need to think kind of backwards a little bit and think, well, if I'm going to be studying faculty narratives, what kinds of questions are going to prompt those narratives? Maybe I need to do interviews live. Maybe I need to do them in some kind of like exchange, where I, have them fill out interview questions asynchronously or something like that. So I haven't even thought through those questions, but I know the time to think about them is now, which is why I'm thinking about it as a 9-month episode. So if you've got something like that, and I know sabbaticals are such a luxury, there are many people that will never have one. So I definitely don't want to make it sound like, yay, they happen all the time, because I know that is not true. I'm very fortunate that the institution that I'm at provides them. So I know that it's a very fortunate position. But given that, I don't want to throw them away on something else. I do want to say just one last thing that other people that have come to us as clients for, many people that they have a sabbatical or just a research leave or whatever it's called, they do planning with us. So if you're somebody that's in that position and you're like, I just want to talk through what I'm going to do and make sure I don't waste my time, please feel free to contact us. I'm at Christine at defendandpublish.com. If you want to set up some writing coaching for that. This is something that it sometimes helps to think through the pieces with somebody. I did it by myself, but I know it won't just be with me. I'm going to again talk with folks that I trust that have gone on sabbatical and kind of talk through my plans. But if you need somebody to do that with, that really will push you to say, well, okay, how are you going to do that? Or you have this 2-week family vacation smack in the middle of your sabbatical. What are you going to do about your time? Feel free to come with us and make a sabbatical plan. I know I will develop a bigger plan going forward, so I know exactly what I'm doing when I'm going there. And I also want to throw in a plug for some mental health. On all the other 2 sabbaticals I took, I also gave myself 1 day off a week, and it didn't have to be all together. It could have been like a morning one day and an afternoon one day, but I did give myself those times off to do some of the things that I've always wanted to do that I couldn't do. Like, for example, visit a museum in the day, the middle of the day by myself, or go visit a friend, or do some other things. Just taking advantage of that flexibility that doesn't happen very often. I know at least one of the sabbaticals, I think it was the second one that I did, I made a much better effort to take care of health, get enough sleep, work out, eat better foods, like all those things that sometimes get lost in the shuffle, but you need to do to make sure that you're maintaining, the capacity to be able to do the work that you want to do. So I hope you find this helpful. And if you want to do some planning with us, come back to me, Christine at defendandpublish.com. Happy writing.